All right, these are my NFL wide receiver preseason rankings for the 2025 NFL season. Let's get started. Starting off with our honorable mentions, we have Olamide Zaccheaus, Adonai Mitchell, Kevontae Turpin, Tutu Atwell, Tyquan Thornton, Darius Slayton, Trey Tucker, Noah Brown, Van Jefferson, and Isaac Tesla. Okay, there's going to be 100 different names here, so I'm not going to talk too much about these guys, especially like the first 50 or so guys until we actually get into our really good receivers in the top 50, top 25-ish. But let's get on to number 100 being Cedric Tillman. He was decent last year for the Browns. Not a whole lot to go off of for his numbers, but he was solid. I think he'll be a good piece for them because they don't really have a whole lot of other pieces. Number 99, Andre Yoshivas for the Bengals. I think he'll definitely have a worse year than last year because I think Joe Burrow will have a worse year. And that's mostly because it's going to be kind of hard for Joe Burrow to replicate what he did a season ago. Also, I think other guys like Noah Fant being in the tight end room is going to help take away from a guy like Andre Yoshivas. Number 98 is going to be Jalen Tolbert. I think their addition of George Pickens is going to make Tolbert's role a lot less. And that's really all this comes down to. He's going to have a less role because they have more wide receivers in their room with them. Number 97 is going to be Jalen Nailor. Kind of a similar thing going for him. The Vikings have a lot of good guys. I think he's going to have a slightly lesser year. Jordan Addison is going to be healthier this year, right? So his role is going to be diminished. Also, I think J.J. McCarthy is going to be a worse quarterback, so he's going to have a worse year. 96 is Adam Thielen. Him also coming into Minnesota again this year. Is going to take some spots away from Jalen Nailor. He was number 22 last year, which is kind of inflated because he was like the only guy getting the ball in Carolina. He also didn't play that many games, but when he did play, he was really, really good. But again, he was the only one getting the ball in Carolina. Now he has Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hawkinson, right? He's going to be like the fourth option at best on this team. So he's definitely going to be a lot worse than he was a season ago. Number 95 is going to be Dyami Brown. He was 71 last year. He came on towards the end of the season for Washington. I think he's going to have a solid year here in Jacksonville, but nowhere near where he was last year, although he's still going to be a pretty solid option here for Trevor Lawrence. 94 is Greg Dortch. He was an honorable mention last year. Jumps up a little bit. I think Kyler Murray is going to have an improved year, and Greg Dortch is going to benefit from that. 93 is Jahan Dotson. I think he comes in, he's a legitimate wide receiver 3 here for the Philadelphia Eagles, behind, of course, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. 92 is Tez Walker for the Ravens. He didn't do much last year as a rookie, but I think he's going to come onto the scene this year and at least carve himself out a legitimate role in this offense for Baltimore. 91 is going to be Allen Lazard. He was 48 last year, but it's kind of a well-known fact that Allen Lazard benefits heavily from Aaron Rodgers, right? Because even a season ago, like 2 years ago now, with Zach Wilson and all those guys at quarterback, right, Allen Lazard was not really doing anything. So getting Aaron Rodgers helped him a whole bunch. And now he has Justin Fields, who I think is still a solid quarterback, but I just think he's not going to get the ball to Allen Lazard as much. Number 90 is Isaiah Bond for the Browns. This one's kind of hard because he just recently signed because he was going through some legal stuff. But if he does actually play for them, I think he'll be a decent wide receiver option for Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, whoever actually ends up playing quarterback for the whole season. Number 89 is going to be Elijah Moore for the Buffalo Bills. He was solid, last year for the Cleveland Browns. I think he'll be solid here for the Bills. They have a lot of wide receivers on this team, though, so he's probably going to be a little bit worse than he was last year. 88 is Roman Wilson. The Steelers do not have a main wide receiver outside of DK Metcalf. They, of course, have Calvin Austin, who was solid last year. But I think Roman Wilson can definitely step it up here and be a wide receiver 3 for Aaron Rodgers. Number 87 is going to be Joshua Palmer. So he was solid for the Chargers last year. I think he's going to be pretty solid for Buffalo. But again, they do have so many receivers on this team. I think he's going to have a smaller role than he did last year, but still be pretty solid. 86 is Marquez Valdes-Scantling for the 49ers. So he played with the Bills last year and did not do much for them, but he was really good when he played for the Saints. I think he's going to have to be solid here for San Francisco because of injuries to guys like Brandon Ayuk to start the season, and then I think he'll be a wide receiver 3 when when Brandon Ayuk comes back from injury, behind probably Ricky Pearsall and of course Brandon Ayuk. He might be a wide receiver 4 behind Juwan Jennings as well. but at least for the start of the season, he's going to have to be a legitimate role in this offense. 85 is Xavier Legette. So I think he does a little bit worse than last year, mostly because the Panthers, of course, got wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan, who I think is going to be pretty good for this team. And they also have Hunter Renfrow, who's going to be solid. But Xavier Legette, still a good player. 84 is going to be Brandon Cooks back in New Orleans. So there's quite a bit of receivers that are kind of going, quite a bit of older receivers that are going back to their original teams, or at least, maybe not their original, but their team that they've been with quite a while ago. But Brandon Cooks going back to New Orleans, I think is pretty cool. They don't have a whole lot going for them outside of Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, so he can get a lot of targets for them as well. 83 is going to be Quentin Johnston. He was 42 last year, but I think he's going to have a worse year than last year. They do bring in, Keenan Allen, who's going to take some targets away from Quentin Johnston, of course, in my personal opinion. I think they have a better tight end room, which is going to take some more targets away from the wide receivers as a whole. So I think he's still going to be solid, but definitely worse than where he was last year. 82 is Troy Franklin. I feel like he has to legitimize himself as a wide receiver 3 for this team. They have Cortland Sutton. They have Marvin Mims. They have no Devon Bailey anymore. Why I think Troy Franklin is a guy that could definitely step up and be a wide receiver 3 for Denver. 81 is Trey Harris. Going to be a rookie here for the Chargers. I think he's going to have a solid season. And I think he's going to be better than Quentin Johnston, which is another guy that's going to take away, some targets from Quentin Johnston. Number 80 is going to be John Mechie. So John Mechie for the Philadelphia Eagles, I think is going to be decent. He's like a wide receiver 4 or potentially 3 for them. They have a lot of guys going for them. But I think he might be better than Jahan Dotson. So it's going to be a solid wide receiver 3 option, of course, behind Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. 79 is going to be Jalen McMillan. He was 47 last year for Tampa Bay. But it comes into this season already being injured. And they have Emeka Egbuka now at wide receiver, which I think is going to be an amazing receiver for them. So that's to take away a little bit of touches from McMillan. And, of course, the injury might hinder him a little bit as well. 78 is Torrey Horton for Seattle. I think he's going to be a really good wide receiver 3 behind JSN, behind Cooper Kupp. I think he's a good rookie out of Colorado State. He's going to have a good season with Sam Darnold. 77 is Tyler Lockett. He was 76 last year. Going to have a similar season this year. He's probably wide receiver 2, even though he was probably wide receiver 3 last year. But being on Tennessee with, Cam Ward, I don't expect him to have a great season, even as a wide receiver 2. 76 is Wan'Dale Robinson. Drops a few spots here. I think their quarterback room is going to be better than it was last year. But I think they have other mouths to feed. Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be a guy that gets the short end of a stick a little bit. But overall, he's still going to have a pretty solid year. 75 is Jack Beck. This was a guy that I think I'm a little bit higher on than most people. He's out of TCU, I believe, unrated last year. He's a rookie now this year. I think he's going to be really solid for them. Probably wide receiver 3 behind Jacoby Myers and Amari Cooper. 74 is Michael Wilson for the Cardinals. Going to have a slightly worse year than last year, but overall, I think he's going to have a pretty good year once again. Number 73 is Demario Douglas. A slightly better year this year. I do think Drake May is going to have a big improvement this year, and Demario Douglas is going to help benefit from that. 72 is Jalen Coker. He's going to be injured for at least the first 4 games of the season. Part of that is why he's going to be dropping quite a bit of spots here. Also getting Tetairoa McMillan is going to take a lot of targets away from him as well. 71 is Jawan Jennings. So he comes into this season injured without a real timetable on his thing. I believe he's on the IR, but he might even be injured longer than that. So we don't really know. He was number 24 last year, but that was with, injuries to Deebo Samuel, injuries to, Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. So, he was basically the only guy that was actually healthy for the majority of the season. But now he comes into this season injured. They have better health aside from him now. So he's going to definitely struggle and drop quite a bit of spots because of that. Number 70 is going to be Kayshon Boutte for New England. Going to be right around the same player he was a season ago for them. 69 is Calvin Austin Jr. I do think he drops a couple of spots, mostly because I think DK Metcalf is going to get an insane amount of touches for them. Also, I think they have better wide receiver depth around this roster than they did a season ago, and he's going to take a small step back because of that. 68 is Romeo Doubs, who was 56 last year. Drops a couple of spots because they bring in Matthew Golden, who I think is going to take a lot of targets away from these other guys on this team. 67 is Keenan Allen. Definitely is going to be worse than what he was last year. I think the Chargers have a pretty deep wide receiver core. Not that the Bears didn't either last year, having Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze, but overall, I think Keenan Allen's obviously getting older. He's going to keep regressing. He's going to be a solid wide receiver 2 option, but he's certainly not going to be a very good wide receiver 2 like he was last year, being one of the better wide receiver 2s in the league. 66 is Rashad Bateman. I think he drops quite a bit. I do think DeAndre Hopkins comes in and takes a pretty good role here in Baltimore. I think Zay Flowers continues to progress. So Rashad Bateman, I think, is going to take a little bit of a step back, but still be a pretty solid wide receiver 3 option for them. 65 is Nick Westbrook-Akine. He looked really good in Tennessee last year, but again, there's not a lot of options in Tennessee besides Calvin Ridley last year. So getting into Miami behind, of course, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, I think he definitely takes a step back. 64 is Josh Reynolds. I think he's going to be really good for New York. He's potentially like a wide receiver 2 option almost. Outside of Garrett Wilson, there's not a whole lot going for New York. So, honorable mention last year, but I think he's going to have a very much improved role here in New York and comes in at 64. Number 63 is Hunter Renfrow for Carolina. So, he was unsigned last year. Basically, I thought he retired, but I guess he was just unsigned. So, he comes into this season, gets signed by Carolina. He did get cut originally after preseason, but then he got re-signed because they traded away Adam Thielen. I think he's going to be a really good receiver for them. Be a really solid option, of course, behind a guy like, Tedoroa McMillan. 62 is going to be Rome Odunze. They take a small step forward. He's probably going to be a wide receiver 2 now because they don't have Keenan Allen. So hopefully he can step up and be a really good wide receiver 2. But I just think he's going to be a pretty mid wide receiver 2, at least this year. They also have good tight ends now with Colson Lovin and Cole Kmet, so they have a lot of great receivers outside of just the wide receiver position. 61 is Christian Watson, so he's going to be injured for at least the first 4 games. But I still think it comes up a little bit. I think Jordan Love improves. I think Christian Watson takes over the wide receiver 3 spot from Romeo Doubs. Right, he's still going to be below Jaden Reed and below Matthew Golden now this season, but I do think he overtakes Romeo Doubs on the depth chart. Number 60 is Christian Kirk. I think he'll have a good season in Houston. They're going to be without, of course, Tank Dell all season, so he's probably wide receiver 2 potentially behind just Nico Collins, but they still have a pretty deep wide receiver group. 59 is Alec Pierce. So last year they had 3 receivers for the Colts: Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, and Michael Pittman, who are all around the same level of guy. I think Alec Pierce takes a small step down, not because he's going to really be a worse player, but they're going to have more mouths to feed at the receiver position, right? They're getting tight end Tyler Warren. I think one of those 3 receivers, Pittman, Downs, and Pierce, will actually take a step forward. So one of them has to take a step back. That's kind of how things work. 58, DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's going to be worse than he was last year, but still better than he was in Kansas City, if that makes sense. In Kansas City, he had a couple good games, but was really just like decent at best as like a wide receiver 3 option, right? This year, I think he's going to be a legitimate wide receiver 2 in Baltimore. Obviously, he was pretty good in Tennessee last year before he got traded to Kansas City. 57 is Rashid Shaheed. He was 31 last year, but New Orleans had a whole bunch of injuries, especially to Chris Olave. That made Rashid Shaheed almost a wide receiver 1 for part of the season, right? Also, he had Derek Carr last year. Now he's going to go down to Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shugg. He's going to take a step back. 56 is Amari Cooper. I think he's going to have a solid year for the Raiders here. Coming in, being a wide receiver 2, probably behind Jakobi Meyers. He's going to be closer to where he was in Cleveland than he was in Buffalo last year. 55 is Demarcus Robinson. He's going to be suspended for at least 3 games of the season, but I think he'll still be pretty good for the Rams as a wide receiver 3 he's on the Niners. That's what I meant to say. He's going to be on the Niners this year, but he's still going to be pretty good for the Niners when he comes back as a wide receiver option for them. 54 is Marvin Mims. I think he takes a small step forward for Denver. They lost Devon Bailey. I think Marvin Mims is going to be a legitimate wide receiver 2 here and be a really good option behind Courtland Sutton. 53 is Jaden Higgins, unrated. Last year he's a rookie. This year out of Iowa State, I believe. I think he's going to be really, really good behind Nico Collins. They have a pretty deep receiving group still with Christian Kirk as well, but I think he is going to be better than Kirk this season. 52 is Marquise Hollywood Brown for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was ranked last year, but he only played about 3 games. He was injured most of the year. I think being fully healthy this year, and with, suspension to Rashee Rice, he's going to have a really big role to start the year, and then fade back into probably wide receiver 3 role after that, but he's still going to be a pretty good wide receiver 3. 51 is going to be Darnell Mooney. He's going to be injured potentially to start the year for Atlanta. He was 36 last year. I think he drops a couple of spots, but overall still going to be a pretty solid wide receiver 2 behind Drake London. Number 50 is going to be Jayden Reed, going to be a really good wide receiver 2 here in Green Bay, behind, of course, Matthew Golden, who I think is going to be great for them. We'll get into his ranking a little bit. But Jayden Reed takes a small step back because of the addition of Matthew Golden, but he's still going to be very good. 49 is going to be Josh Downs for the Colts. Takes a pretty significant step down, minus 14 spots here. But I mentioned this earlier with Alec Pierce. I think Michael Pittman is going to take a step forward. So these guys are going to take a small step back, and then the addition of Tyler Warren as well is going to lead to less targets for their wide receiver position. 48 is going to be Travis Hunter as a rookie this season. I think he's going to be pretty solid wide receiver 2, most likely behind, of course, Brian Thomas Jr., but he's going to be a pretty solid wide receiver 2 in my opinion. 47 is going to be Brandon Ayuk. He was number 80 last year. I don't think he's going to be that bad, but he's not going to be, where he was 2 seasons ago. But he's going to be injured for about the first 6 games of the season. But I do think he comes back and plays pretty solid, but still not quite where he was, 2 seasons ago by any means. 46 is Khalil Shakir, who was 46 last year. Going to be at the exact same spot for the exact same team with a pretty crowded wide receiver room once again. 45 is Luther Burden for Chicago. I think he's going to be really good. I did mention earlier that I thought Rome Odunze would be wide receiver 2, but I kind of forgot about the existence of Luther Burden. So Burden coming in being wide receiver 2, I think is going to be a pretty solid move. He's going to be pretty good for Chicago. 44 is going to be Jakobi Meyers. He drops 16 spots here for the Raiders. I think they have a better wide receiver group overall, so he's going to have a little bit of a lesser role because last year, he was getting a insanely large part of the touches because their receiver room was bad without him. I think the receiver room definitely improved, so he's going to get a little bit less touches. 43 is going to be Calvin Ridley, similar position for him. I think he's going to have a better quarterback this year with, Cam Ward instead of Will Levis, but he's still not going to be a good wide receiver 1 in this league by any means. 42 is Ricky Pearsall. I think he does overtake the wide receiver 1 position here in San Francisco. Brandon Ayuk's going to be gone to start the year. DeMarcus Robinson's gone to start the year. Juwan Jennings potentially gone to start the year as well. So at the beginning of the season, he is going to be the guy. And that's going to carry on for the whole season in my opinion, but still not an elite wide receiver 1 because they do have so many guys that are also pretty good, but he's going to be really solid this season. 41, Michael Pittman. So I do think he is going to be the definitive wide receiver 1 in Indianapolis this season. So he takes a step up while some of those other receivers take a step down. Number 4 is going to be Chris Godwin. He was number 10 last year, which was very high. He was injured for a decent amount of the year last year, but when he did play, he was great. I definitely think he takes a step back. His injury is going to be a big part of that, and also getting Emeka Egbuka into this team is going to be a big part of that as well. 39 is going to be Chris Olave. Hold up. Sorry, I'm back. But Chris Olave, I think, is definitely going to improve from where he was last year. He was definitely injured at times when he played. He was also playing with some pretty bad quarterback play, which he's going to do that again this year. But overall, I think he's going to definitely improve from where he was last year as long as he can stay healthy for the majority of the year. Number 38 is going to be Matthew Golden. I've already talked about him quite a bit. I think he's going to be wide receiver 1 here in Green Bay. He is really, really good in my opinion. It's going to be great for them. They still have a lot of good guys in Green Bay, so he's not going to be insane, but he's still going to be a pretty solid wide receiver 1 in my opinion. Number 37 is going to be Cooper Kupp. I think he was pretty good last year, obviously. Number 33, I think he takes a small step back. He's getting older in a new position. I think he's going to be wide receiver 2 behind JSN for them, but he's still going to be a very, very good wide receiver 2 in this league. 36 is DJ Moore. He's going to drop 10 spots in my opinion. I think the Bears have a slightly better receiving core and also have a very, very good tight end core with Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet. So DJ Moore takes a small step back because there are more mouths to feed. 35 is Emeka Egbuka as a rookie coming in at number 35 with a very, very good receiving core around him is a pretty good sign, right? He's going to be wide receiver 2. at the very least for the start of the season with Godwin and Jalen McMillan injured, and I think he's going to stay at the wide receiver 2 when they come back. 34 is Xavier Worthy. He was number 38 last year. Looked very, very good in the Super Bowl, at least in like the second half. I think he's going to be a very, very good wide receiver 2. He's going to be wide receiver 1 at the start when Rashee Rice is suspended, but I do think Rice overtakes him as wide receiver 1 when he comes back. 33 is Stephon Diggs. He was 32 last year. I think he's going to be looking really good in New England. Nothing crazy, nothing like where he had been in Buffalo, but he had a solid year in Houston, even though it was definitely maybe a little bit disappointing. He was still pretty good as a wide receiver. He's going to still be pretty good in New England, although he's not an elite wide receiver anymore. 32 is going to be Deebo Samuel. He was number 54 last year. I think he does take a pretty significant step forward here in Washington as a wide receiver 2 behind Terry McLaurin, but it almost is kind of a 1A, 1B type of thing. He's not going to be much worse than McLaurin if he is at all. I definitely think he takes a step forward from where he was last year. 31 is Jordan Addison. He's going to be suspended for 3 games this year. I think he was very, very good last year, but I think he takes a small step back this year. Part of that is because of the addition of a guy like Adam Thielen on this roster, who's going to be a guy that takes some targets. Also, the suspension is going to hurt his chemistry with his new quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, who also is the reason why he drops down, because I think McCarthy is going to be worse than Sam Darnold. Number 30 is Courtland Sutton. I think he drops a few spots. I think Denver does have a more well-rounded receiving core, especially with a tight end guy that they brought in with Evan Ingram, who's going to be a big part of their receiving game as well. Number 29 is going to be Keon Coleman. I think he is going to break out and be the wide receiver 1 here in Buffalo. They still have a lot of good wide receivers, so he's not going to be elite, even though he is their wide receiver 1, but he's going to be a lot better than he was last season. I think he definitely is going to be the best receiver in Buffalo. Number 28 is going to be Tyrell McMillan for Carolina. Number 28 as a rookie, I feel like is pretty good. Bryce Young's going to be solid. Ted McMillan is definitely going to be the best receiver in this team by far, in my personal opinion. 27 is going to be Devontae Smith. I think he takes a small step back. I think I had guys like Jahan Dotson, who I thought was going to take a step up for them. They got a guy like John Mechie coming in, who's going to be a good wide receiver 3. So they have a deep receiving core, a very deep 4-man core at least. So I think that takes some targets away from Devontae Smith, but he's still going to be very good. 26 is George Pickens. I think he's going to improve a little bit. He was good in Pittsburgh last year, but I think he's going to have a better quarterback in Dak Prescott, even though he technically will be a wide receiver 2, whereas last year he was wide receiver 1. I still think he's going to have a better quarterback who's going to, utilize him very, very well, even as a wide receiver 2. 25 is going to be Jalen Waddle, who was number 60 last year, which was pretty bad. He was also injured for parts of the season, and also, of course, was playing with not Tua for parts of the season as well. So as long as Tua can stay healthy, Jalen Waddle should have an amazing season as a wide receiver 2. Number 24 is going to be Jameson Williams. Takes a small step back for Detroit. I think Detroit as a whole is going to take a small step back, but overall, Jameson Williams is still going to be a very, very good wide receiver 2 behind Amon-Ra St. Brown. 23 is going to be Terry McLaurin. Takes a pretty significant step down this year. Part of that is because they are going to bring in Deebo Samuel, so he does have some real competition for that wide receiver 2 spot with Deebo. So he's going to take a small step back here, but it's still going to be very, very good. Just not necessarily an elite wide receiver anymore, but still very good. 22 is Jerry Jeudy. He was 34 last year in Cleveland. They did not have a whole lot of guys to throw the ball to, which they still don't this year. So I think Jerry Jeudy is definitely going to benefit from lack of surrounding receiving core. And he has Joe Flacco at quarterback, who was really, really liking Jerry Jeudy when he was with Cleveland last time. Number 21 is going to be Rashee Rice. He's suspended for 6 games. But I do think he's going to be a pretty good wide receiver 1 for them when he comes back. Not an elite wide receiver by any means, but still very good. Number 20 is going to be Drake London. He was 16 last year. Takes a small step back, in my opinion. Not for any real reason. It's just kind of, there's a lot of guys around the same area. A 4-position drop-off really isn't doing much. Number 19 is going to be Davante Adams. He drops 8 spots. He was wide receiver 1 in New York last year with Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be wide receiver 2 behind Puka this year. So that's why he drops 8 spots. Still an elite wide receiver 2 in the league. Number 18 is going to be Zay Flowers. He was 39 last year. I think he takes another step forward and becomes a top 18 wide receiver. They have a pretty deep receiving core in Baltimore, but Zay Flowers I think is going to be far and away the best guy there. Number 17 is Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think it's going to overtake the wide receiver 1 spot now in Seattle. No DK Metcalf. They have Cooper Kupp now. And JSN I think is better than Cooper Kupp. He's going to continue to progress and be very, very good for Sam Darnold this year. Number 16 is going to be Puka Nacua. Drops a couple of spots because I do think bringing in Devontae Adams is an upgrade over Cooper Kupp. So that's going to take a little bit of the targets away from Puka Nacua. Also, as long as everybody can stay healthy, because Cooper Kupp was injured for a little bit last year, which also helped inflate Puka Nacua's numbers. Tyler Higbee was injured last year for a lot of the season, which helped inflate Puka Nacua's numbers as well. Number 15 is going to be T. Higgins. He was number 4 last year as a wide receiver 2, which was crazy. But he also didn't play every game, so that definitely helped his case because his per-game stats were amazing. But if he's healthy for the whole 17 games, it's going to be harder to keep up those insane game-by-game statistics. But I think he's still going to be amazing and likely be the best wide receiver 2 in the league. Number 14 is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he was number 27 last year, which is obviously very, very good for a rookie. But he takes a big step this year as well, and I think he becomes an elite wide receiver coming in at number 14. Number 13 is going to be Malik Neighbors. He was 14 last year. Going to be around the same type of guy. There's not a whole lot he can go up here unless he gets a way better quarterback, which I do think he has a better quarterback, but not like by that much. So he's not going to be that much better than he was last year, but still going to be very, very good. Number 12 is CeeDee Lamb. Jumps up just 1 spot. I think having Dak Prescott healthy for the whole season will definitely help him be slightly better than he was last year. Number 11 is going to be Ladd McConkey. I think it's a jump up 4 spots. He was great last year as a rookie. I think he's going to be amazing for LA once again this season. Even though they do have a better receiving core around him, I think he's still going to be better than he was last year. Number 10 is going to be Mike Evans. He was number 6 last year. Drops down to number 10. They have a better receiving core around him with Emeka Egbuka in here, as long as Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan are healthy, when they're supposed to be this year. Mike Evans is still going to be an elite receiver, but just not quite as good as he was last year. Number 9 is going to be A.J. Brown. He was number 8 last year. Drops just 1 spot. Not a whole lot to say about this guy. He's going to be elite once again. Number 8 is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. I swapped those 2 guys. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is obviously still very young. He was just a rookie last year. So coming into this year, he should improve marginally, while as a guy like A.J. Brown has kind of reached his peak. Number 7 is going to be DK Metcalf. He jumps up 30 spots in this ranking. I mean, he was obviously great in Seattle last year, but I think he's going to be elite in Pittsburgh because they don't have a whole lot of guys to throw the ball to. Last year, Seattle had JSN. They had Tyler Lockett, who was still pretty good, right? They had Kenneth Walker out of the backfield catching quite a bit of passes as well. They had good tight ends. Pittsburgh does have some good tight ends, but their wide receiver 2 is Calvin Austin, right? Very, very big drop down from guys like Tyler Lockett and JSN. So because of that, I think DK is going to be like the guy in Pittsburgh and get a lot of touches and be a top 7 wide receiver. Number 6 is Garrett Wilson. He was 29 last year. Similar thing with DK Metcalf as it is for him. He probably has a better quarterback in my personal opinion. I think Justin Fields will be marginally better than what Aaron Rodgers was for New York last year. And Devontae Adams on this team, right? So I think Garrett Wilson is going to be utilized quite a bit more because they don't have a wide receiver 2, right? Like, Garrett Wilson is the guy in New York. Number 5 is Tyreek Hill. I think he jumps up 20 spots, and that's really going to be hindering on Tyreek Hill's health as well as Tua's health. Tua's health is honestly more important than Tyreek Hill because even if Tyreek Hill is not 100%, he's still very, very good, right? But he really needs Tua as his quarterback because if he has a backup quarterback go in, he's not going to be nearly as good because those guys aren't good enough to give him the ball when he burns a guy and has to throw the ball 70-plus yards. Number 4 is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, jumping up just 1 spot. Not a whole lot to say about him. He's elite. He's going to stay elite. Number 3, Nico Collins, who was number 3 last year. Houston is a very good wide receiver core, but again, no Tank Dell for the whole season. Is still going to allow Nico to be that guy. Number 2 is Jamar Chase. He drops 1 spot. He won the Triple Crown last year, right? So having him not at number 1 is kind of hard to do, but also, how many times do we see the number 1 wide receiver stay the same year after year, right? A lot of time it fluctuates a little bit. I think it fluctuates a little bit here, and he drops one spot. And number one, of course, is then going to be Justin Jefferson. Those are easily the two best wide receivers in the league. You can change them if you want to. I don't really care that much. But in my personal opinion, Justin Jefferson will be the best wide receiver in the league in 2025. But you can look at my simple view going on here. I'm not going to talk about this. You want to look at it, take a picture of it, whatever. But that is going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check back my other videos that are going to be going on this week. And if you have not watched my other positional rankings, please go back and do so.